up Rory Cox. Damien, Kellen, it's time to sit down. No, you can go, Lauren, as long as you're quiet. Okay, so we will have plenty of time for networking after the event. So I'm going to introduce Rory now. He has been an analyst in the Energy Efficiency Branch of the California Public Utilities Commission for over 5 years, and in that time has provided oversight for marketing, the Water Energy Nexus, the Energy Efficiency Strategic Plan, industrial and agricultural programs, and other programs. He is currently the staff lead for Zero Net Energy Policy. He's the author of Regulating Energy Efficiency, a white paper that was intended to make sense of the CPUC's complex evaluation and regulation of EE programs. Welcome, Rory. And this is...
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much. I just want to start off with, so Kelly said, oh, got to be careful what I say, ex parte rules. I am not a commissioner. I don't work for a commissioner. I work in energy division. So ex parte rules do not apply to me. There's nobody else in the PUC here. So you do not have to worry about ex parte in this meeting. So I just wanted to let you know that. So don't censor yourselves. It's sort of it's been an interesting morning because a lot of us are looking at the same thing and talking about it in slightly different directions. But it seems like I hear a lot of sort of consensus and a lot of understanding of what all the issues are with where we're going, especially with regards to the building code. There's going to be a little bit of repeat in my presentation. I also borrowed some slides from the CEC and, you know, so on and so forth, but they're different slides that I borrowed. So, so let me get started. So I'm going to talk about our zero net energy policy and, you know, first of all, sort of what is zero net energy. And when we started zero net energy took off in a big way, and about 10 years ago when we put it in the Energy Efficiency Strategic Plan as one of the big, bold goals, actually two of the big, bold goals, and those goals are to, one of which is to be, for all new residential, to be zero net energy by 2020. And at the time and there's a commercial goal as well, but it was all about the building. Nobody was really thinking beyond the building. It was kind of like ZNE is all about the building. Well, since then, things have evolved quite a bit because we and other stakeholders have realized that the building is not necessarily the best unit to which making ZNE is a good idea. So you'll see on the slide, this has definitions of a ZNE campus where an entire campus can be zero net energy, a zero net energy portfolio. So somebody like the Department of General Services who actually came up with these definitions. They own 50 some odd buildings. So they can all be zero net energy. You know, some can be more efficient than others, but if they balance out to ZNE, then bingo, you've got a ZNE portfolio. Or a ZNE community, something like what you see pictured there, where there's this combination of rooftop plus community to create a community that is all ZNE. And these are our goals that I just mentioned, the residential one. All new commercial construction will be ZNE by 2030. So that's the next big frontier once we figure out this residential thing. I think some people are already thinking about the commercial goal. And I know Mindy's going to talk about that soon. A raft of legislation, there's a few bills that this has influenced. 50% of existing commercials will be retrofit to ZNE by 2030, and through a executive order from the governor, all new and major renovations of state buildings shall be ZNE by 2025. Now, all these goals are, when they were written, they were called aspirational goals, which is this, except for the executive order. Aspirational goals means, kind of voluntary. And at the time, I think, maybe some people thought this was just a sort of a feel-good exercise, and we do the report and it sits on a shelf and no one will ever, hear about it again. But that's the complete opposite happened. I mean, the energy efficiency strategic plan, where these things were memorialized, really sort of set off a whole series of market actors, being very active in the area, and it also set off the CEC and to start talking about a ZNE building code. And I don't know if I just want to acknowledge Christopher Meyer is sitting quietly over there for this entire morning, but he's been very instrumental in this process, and I'm hoping if any complicated questions come up, he'll bail me out. Whoops, I'm going backwards. There we go. So on the point of catalyzing the market, production builders have gotten into zero net energy. A few weeks ago, I went to see, so did Mindy, something that's breaking ground in Clovis, California. It's, I think, 36 new ZNE homes. As I mentioned when I was questioning, in my question, it was originally going to have community solar, but they scrapped that plan. But here's a list of cities. These have been mentioned before. I do just want to bring up that Hayward has a public building ZNE program and goal, and I want to bring it up because it's my hometown. And Hayward's a hard scrabble working class town, and it's great to see Hayward jump into this. Why do I keep going backwards? Okay, and another. This is a screenshot of the website from Newhall Ranch. So Newhall Ranch is a new proposed project going in north of Los Angeles. It is basically going to be not just a ZNE community, it's going to be a ZNE city as it's planned. It is 20,000 new homes, plus all the supporting commercial and schools and all the other types of things. It's going to have electric buses and electric car chargers, and this is all according to their website. This is still going through the permitting process. But that's kind of this is one to watch definitely in terms of how it rolls out, because it's pretty huge. Part of the reason this happened is that this is a very controversial project in terms of its land use implications. I think there were some environmental groups that really didn't like where they were going to build this new city. So the compromise was, well, we'll just make it as carbon free as we possibly can. So there's Newhall Ranch. Excuse me. This graph just this graph just shows in general the uptake of zero net energy buildings for the last 17 years. And you can see that 2008 is when the energy efficiency strategic plan came out, and that is when we really saw an uptick in the construction of buildings. We're still just under 400, so it's still a little bit of a novelty, but I think things are definitely it's growing exponentially. And here's our role, what our regulatory role in zero net energy, which is that, well, first of all, we published the long-term energy efficiency strategic plan and the big bold goals. And a little sort of historical interesting note is that there's this restaurant across the street from the PUC called Max's, and on the menu they have something called big bold salads, and then we came out with the big bold goals, and it's not a coincidence. But most of what we regulate the investor-owned utilities, and the programs that we work with them on and oversee are the California Advanced Home Program. That's a residential new construction program that PG&E runs. Savings by Design, which is SCE's program. That's a commercial new construction program. Emerging technologies, and we do EM&V studies. Within our EM&V budget, we actually have some funding for ZNE education and advocacy, which is why I get to work with my friend Mindy, who we're going to hear from soon. and a codes and standards program as well. We've been doing a lot of work with the CEC on the building code. You know, we're just a state policymaker and all-around advocate for ZNE. And so to get to the, now I'm going to talk about the residential building code that the CEC been working on, and we've talked about a few times already. But this is their slide, and this kind of just goes over the goals of where they want to go with the ZNE code. This is just sort of their mission statement and their and all the tactics and everything that they're including in the program. And this is kind of shows you the framework for their energy design rating tool. So I thought this was an interesting slide. It kind of, you know, the score is you get scored on things like, you know, the insulation, the lighting, whether there's this is the energy efficiency scale. You know, various efficient things that you do to the house get you know, scored on this bar. There's a separate one for generation. Is that right, Chris? Right.
Apologies for people on the phone. But basically, we found that modeling it, the best you could do with just efficiency only, with high performance attics, walls, triple pane windows, you know, things that weren't even cost effective, we could get down to 30 to 38 in this EDR score. To get closer to a ZNE house of 0, you have to add PV panels, which will get you down to the 20s. And then if you want battery storage, you can go farther.
Right. Yeah. And this is kind of this is their dashboard. So if you are a building developer, this is where you plug in all your numbers, and where that number actually, and how you get the different numbers for your EDR. So this is the sort of tangible of how it will work for building developers. So, you know, we're kind of like the Debbie Downers in this world in a way, because we're very, very keyed in on cost effectiveness. And so we commissioned a study that looked at what is the cost effectiveness to the grid for a ZNE policy. So we know what it will cost. I mean, we have a pretty good idea what it costs the building owner, but what is the cost of the grid, especially if you have an entire neighborhood, entirely newly built neighborhood with all having solar, all creating energy at noon when no one's home. And all that power is going, is reverse flow or otherwise needs somewhere to go. So we did a study that we hired DNVGL to look at the cost of that dynamic, just to see, because anything the utility has to do outside, I shouldn't say anything, but a lot of what the utility has to do to adjust for that at the substation level, at the circuit level, whatever they need to add and account for is socialized amongst all ratepayers. It's not just the person who bought the house. So, and that's kind of something that we're always concerned about at the PUC. You know, we obviously we support all these policies, but we kind of like to go into them with our eyes wide open, because we don't want to have sticker shock later down the road, and we certainly don't want to have a ratepayer uprising because the rates have gone so high with all the these new policies. So we wanted to take a look at this, and this is the ZNE grid integration study. So evaluating the impacts of ZNE on the distribution grid, and it was the scope was to calculate the integration cost of ZNE to the grid and work with the CEC to incorporate these codes into Title 24. DNVGL did the study, they're engineers and I am not, so that worked out pretty good. And so they mapped annual PV growth to the distribution circuits using the geographic allocation method, assumed a 2 kW system size per home, used all these different assumptions, and did a few different scenarios for, high cost. I'll get into the scenarios in just a second. So the high cost scenario, now they acknowledge that this scenario is highly unlikely. This assumes that all the buildings are going to be clustered in one area, the farthest away from the circuit. But the high cost scenario is, and it's a lot different between each utility, but I'll get into that later. But we broke out the cost for what the cost per ratepayer is over 10 years, and it's especially for the SDG&E area, it's pretty significant, and it's not zero, which is where we are concerned. And then we also did a smart inverter sensitivity case where we looked at smart inverters, which are getting to be standard equipment now, and it turns out that makes a big difference. But smart inverters basically are, they're the thing that talks to between your solar panel and the grid, and a smart inverter, the utility can actually control the inverter, so it can reduce or shut off the power flow. And smart inverter case, the prices, the costs come down quite a bit, a third to 2/3 lower than the high cost scenario. So we're getting better as we add that in. And then we did a low cost scenario where we added energy storage as well. And then energy storage, we really drive down the cost quite a bit, to where in some scenarios it's practically it's not much at all over the course of 10 years. So the lesson learned that these things that we're already doing, we've talked a lot about storage already, so that's already happening. But you can see how important it is just for the greater grid that we really get storage right. And it also illustrates the importance of smart inverters in this whole thing, which, like I said, they will be standard equipment. But the point being that that there is a cost to doing ZNE communities, especially all in one area. And here's some mitigation measures that we looked at, including cogeneration mode, several other things. So there are other mitigation measures as well. So this is just good, as you're thinking about, if you're thinking about doing ZNE stretch code, or when you think about developing after 2020, it's just good to sort of have this background. So like I said, you sort of go in and you work with your utility or the CCA or whoever, just to go in with this, eyes open. The reason for the cost differences between the utilities are that PG&E, for instance, has the highest home to feeder ratio, so their costs are going to be higher than SCE's. The distance from the substation to the end of the circuit is longer for PG&E, and the average PV penetration that's already there is highest with PG&E. So conclusions: integration costs of high penetration PV, whether driven by ZNE policy or net energy metering policy alone, can be high if not mitigated. Mitigation measures are available with smart inverters, as well as optimal location. I didn't really talk about that, but that can also be helpful. We have a integration cost analysis that helps with that tool. And the likely case is the lower smart inverter case. That high cost case was just like we just wanted to look at the highest one just to see if you did nothing, what would happen. And that's it. And the full report is available. I didn't put the website up, but it is up on our website. It's puc.ca.gov/ZNE, and you can read the full engineering report there if you'd like. And that's kind of it. Anybody has any questions? Yes.
Okay, there we go. Alexi Miller with New Buildings Institute. I saw you had our graph of zero net energy buildings with what I want to think is the beginning of a hockey stick of growth. I just wanted to note we are coming out with a new list of California zero net energy buildings Monday or Tuesday. So if you're interested in seeing where the current state of ZNE buildings in this state is, that'll be coming in a couple days.
Great. Yeah, Francesca.
Hi. Hey, Francesca Wall with Tesla. So Rory, we were excited to see this study, and I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. One of our trade groups, the Solar Energy Industries Association, commented on it, and one of the key things that they weighed in on was the fact that the study did not look at the benefits quantified, and so I just wanted to kind of get your take on that.
Well, the study said that it said this is not a cost-benefit analysis at the beginning. It's just a sheer. This is just what it was just an engineering study. So when you say benefits, you mean the societal benefits and the economic development benefits and the greenhouse gas. Yeah, we know. And it's not. And that's why we're not saying God stop everything. We know that. It's just we're not. We support the policy. We just hope that as people move forward with it, they look at these mitigation. We just want people to do the mitigation and to think about to think that it could have costs if done wrong. So I hope that answers it. But yeah, we didn't set out to do a whole.
Sorry, I just want to hold any more questions till the panel discussion at this time. So thank you again, Rory.
Thanks.